I thought that was the thumbnail.
I see some of my followers coming up.
No.
Oh, yeah?
Here, sit on so that way you're in frame. Okay.
What's going on, everyone?
Alright, hold on. One. Oh. Okay, one,
Why are we
two,
not good?
Why is this not? Three. Come on. We should be
good to go. Bump the cable again.
No, it's not. It's not that. It's YouTube.
Yeah, you could go. Go ahead.
Alright,
What's going on, everyone? Tanner here of Serpa Design. If you don't know who I am, you can follow me on YouTube. I do a lot of instructional videos on how to make terrariums. I do stuff with aquariums as well. I've actually been keeping aquariums for much longer than I've had terrariums, but it kind of all segued into that. So definitely go check out my channel if you're today. What's going on,
we're gonna be doing
hold on. One.
Well, he's gonna be showing some terrarium things because I've never actually made a full-on terrarium. This is an example right here of one that he actually made for me already.
Should be.
And good to go. It's really cool. I've never dove into
No, it's not. It's not that. It's YouTube.
Yeah, you can go.
Alright, what's going on, everyone? Tanner here of Serpa Design. If you don't know who I am, we're gonna talk about. There's a lot of instruction videos on how to make terrariums. I do stuff with aquariums as well. Terrariums actually keeping aquariums. The aquarium I have terrariums, but it kind of all segued into that. So definitely go check out my channel. Traditionally, a terrarium.
We're gonna be doing
one.
He's gonna be showing some terrarium things because I've never actually made a full-on
You set it up.
This is an example right here
You put a certain
one
amount
that
of
he
water
actually
in
made
there.
for me
You seal
already.
it up, and that's it.
Good to go. It's really cool. I've never dove into
No, it's not. It's not that. It's YouTube.
Yeah, you can go.
Alright, what's going on, everyone? Tanner here. If you don't know who I am. Now there are terrariums here. There's a lot of instruction videos.
Okay, we're good. Alright, you ready?
That's not how I look at terrariums. I look at them kind of like aquascape or bonsai, where it's an art form. You have to continually maintain this to make it look its best. And I get a lot of hate for it, but that's why you see long-term success with my terrariums as well as aesthetically pleasing. And it's not like I'm opening this thing every other day. Like, I'll open them twice a year, if that. It's a rare thing, but I definitely do recommend it.
So just to touch, we had a little audio issue, but we're good now. There's a little bit of echo, so I apologize.
Did all that go through?
It kind of went through. I don't know. You want to?
Should I redo it?
I guess. I mean.
Okay, we'll restart. Sorry, guys. Sorry.
This is what happens when you're live. These are the things.
This is why I don't go live. In case you were wondering.
Technical difficulties.
So, we'll restart. Hi, my name is Tanner of Serpa Design. If you don't know who I am, I run a pretty substantial, I guess semi-substantial channel here on YouTube. I delve mostly into terrariums, but I do a lot of stuff with aquariums and various exotic animals and all kinds of different videos. So just go check out my channel if you want to know what I'm about. Today I'm going to be showing you guys how to make a terrarium like this right here. Traditionally, a terrarium is basically an enclosed environment in which you plant plants, set up a little ecosystem like this, fill it up with a certain amount of water, and it sustains itself indefinitely, essentially. And there are different ways to look at terrariums. Some people are like terrarium purists, where they see if you open up a terrarium after you've set it up, they think that's like a no-go. That's not a terrarium anymore. For me personally, I like to open them up, maintain them, kind of upkeep with them like an aquascape. I feel personally that that's how you can get a terrarium to look its best as well as perform its best. Now, like, because you're not going to be able to maintain a scape like this if you don't maintain it or trim the plants and whatnot.
Yeah.
So
maintaining is really important.
Absolutely. A little bit of backstory on terrariums. They kind of started out with this guy, Nathaniel Bagshaw Ward. He invented the Wardian case. You guys have probably seen them. It's like a little black box. It kind of looks like a glass aquarium, and those were originally used to transport tropical plants to Europe back in the 1800s, and that later segued into the terrarium, the vivarium, and it was also an inspiration later for the glass aquarium. So if you do a little bit of research on that, that's something interesting to look into. And I think with that, we might as well just start building the terrarium.
Yeah, definitely. So, one thing I want to say thank you for being here today. I appreciate it. I know this is these go hand in hand because terrariums and aquariums are very similar for those reasons, but also many aquarium plants can be used in terrariums. A lot of them are grown above water as terrestrial plants. So it's actually something that you could use for both. You know, if you have an aquarium, you could take trimmings, throw it in a terrarium. Most of the time, they should do okay.
Yeah, and we'll talk more about that as we get into the build here, because I have a whole little script here for you guys. It's not a script, but outline.
Some notes.
So, how do we go from a glass jar to something like this?
And here, I'm going to show this a little up close so you guys can see what he's talking about. Now, I do realize that there's a little kind of fungus growing. Is that, so that's normal?
Yeah, that's totally normal, and spiderwood especially is prone to that. Even within the aquarium, you tend to see it, from my experience at least, like on manzanita wood, how it has that little film about it.
Right.
I feel like spiderwood tends to do that as
well.
Yeah,
they get that weird bacteria or fungus or something.
And so yeah, we'll definitely talk about the fungus later on.
All right.
But to start, we just got a standard glass container. Now, whenever you're making a closed terrarium like this, because that's what I'm going to show you today, there's various different types of terrariums, but we're going to focus mainly on a closed terrarium. You want something that's going to not allow the water to evaporate. So in this case, I have a little glass top here with a plastic or rubber gasket, and that's going to keep all of the moisture in this glass container. Alternatively, you could have something with a cork, or even those canning jars, various different things that you could
make a terrarium out of this.
Yeah, there you go. And something I should backtrack a little bit. You don't need a ton of money to make terrariums, and if you want to know more about specifically how to do that, just go check. I have a ton of videos on it. But anyways,
I've actually watched several of his videos on how to like do cool terrariums with cactuses and stuff. I have some stuff upstairs. I wouldn't quite say it's like that degree, but it's like 10% of what you do. So
well, in line with that, you don't need to make something that looks like Escape like this. And what I was telling Justin earlier is, like, I have a pretty extensive background in art and design and different things like that. So I incorporate those elements into this. I'm not a trained aquascape or anything like that. I'm not all about iwagumi or these various different principles. I just kind of set up stuff that looks like nature. I don't, and with anything in life, that's not really how I go about it, but whatever.
Yeah, you just gotta let it do its thing.
Let it do its thing.
You're containing nature in a glass box or a glass cylinder in this case.
Yeah, you don't need to overthink it.
It's gonna do its own thing eventually. So.
All right, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna start out with the false bottom. The false bottom is also known as the riparian layer, and essentially what it does is it keeps all of the water down in the bottom of the container, separate from the substrate layer and the plant's roots and whatnot. Now that's really important because long term, like in an aquarium, you have your bed of gravel or your sand or whatever. Eventually you're going to have beneficial bacteria colonize in that, and you'll have it colonize in your filtration as well, but arguably you get more within the surface area of the aquarium itself if you have gravel or something like that.
Real quick, I see some questions coming across. Where to get glass jars like this?
Oh, so I got this one at Hobby Lobby. If you don't have Hobby Lobbies near you, Joanne Fabric, Home Goods.
Home Goods is a good one.
Various, if you actually go on my Instagram, I have these huge containers. They're like 20 to 30 gallons. I got those at Home Goods for about $20. So pretty much craft stores, or what would you consider Home Goods? Like
a home decor store.
Yeah, home decor stores. So many different options.
Also, vintage or antique stores may have some as well.
I got a ton of stuff from antique stores as well.
All right, so
anyways,
false bottom.
False bottom, aka the riparian layer. Very important because, as I was explaining, it keeps the water separate from everything else in the terrarium. It also helps perpetuate the water cycle. And as I said, you are going to get a certain amount of bacteria in here, and you want beneficial bacteria. And if you were to just put dirt in here, you might have a terrarium that would work long term, but it's very rare. I haven't had it work too well for me. It seems to be that when you have a strong false bottom, a strong foundation, your terrarium's going to be strong. And that's with anything in life. Get a strong foundation, build upon it, and you'll have success. So, I have two different types of stones here. I just have like little river pebbles. I believe I got these at the dollar store. And then I have some pea pebbles. I got these from Home Depot. You could also use aquarium gravel. So, you'll see a lot of crossover between terrarium and aquarium because the materials a lot of the time are the same. So, what I want to do is start out with the river pebbles here, and I'm just going to put them down here. These ones are mainly just for aesthetic purposes, to create a little striation effect from large pebbles to small pebbles.
Now, much like an aquarium filter, you always are looking for like porous materials. These are river rocks. They're very smooth, and then these are more coarse. They're not porous, but they do have more texture to them. So does that affect this at all? Like,
nah, not particularly.
Could you use like ceramic media?
Yeah, you could use ceramic media. You could use perlite, which is I believe it's just a branded version of pumice.
Lava rock?
Lava rock. You could also use just sand. The issue that I tend to find with sand is, much like in an aquarium where it kind of has, if it's too thick, it gets that just like grossness about it.
Right.
That will tend to happen, and then it in some ways can ruin the terrarium. You can have success with it, but it doesn't seem to be as good of a method. And I actually have a whole video about false bottoms, and I talk about all kinds of different alternatives.
So somebody has a question. They say that they're confused. If you have all the same elements as an aquarium, how is this different as far as bacterial growth goes, etc.?
Well, I think it's a different type of bacteria.
Yeah, it's probably because you got to keep in mind the bacteria that's in your aquarium filter is kind of adapted to wet environments.
Right. And don't dwindle too much on the bacteria of this. It's important, but it's not like a super important component. But let's backtrack a little bit. The main, like, why the false bottom is so important is not necessarily about that. It's to keep the water separate from the substrate layer. The thing is that long term, if you think about what's going on in here, it's going to be an extremely humid environment, and it's going to be constantly moist. With that type of environment, if you have substrate in here, it's going to want to compact if it's always in contact with water. So with this, we're keeping the water separate from the substrate so that it's not getting like soupy, and I always use the word putrid. So like long term, if you smell a terrarium maybe a year later, it should smell like the forest. But if you don't make a false bottom, it will smell like a gross aquarium, just like a putrid, stinky smell.
Yeah. And this is actually another thing that they use, like with houseplants and cactuses. You want to put like rocks or gravel or something to allow water to drain out.
Right.
For the same kind of reasons, it also causes root rot in some plants that don't don't sit in water, that aren't bog plants essentially.
Right. And that's a good thing to bring up. Bog plants. A lot of aquarium plants are bog plants, so they'll have periods throughout the year where they actually are emerged, like they're not underwater, and these are plants that will do really well in a terrarium, a vivarium, or a paludarium, or a riparium even. And if you're not familiar with what those are, that's kind of like a crossover between a terrarium and an aquarium.
If you guys have seen my video on the tank in my living room, that's the huge pillar tank. I forgot what I called it, or the title of the video, but it's just this huge, massive dragonstone pillar. And that's essentially like almost like a paludarium, but kind of like a vivarium. It's like a mixture of things.
Yeah.
So that's something, but he also has some videos on his channel having to do with that as well.
So what we're doing is replacing a little bit of gravel, and there's not really an exact science to how much you want to put down in here. For a container of this size, around an inch should be sufficient. And then once you go really large scale, 2 inches is probably good, but on a small scale, something as small as 1/4 of an inch would work as well. It all depends on how much water you put in here. So that should be good enough. Next up, we could just put the dirt in here.
So if you guys are watching on Instagram, you can head on over to YouTube. I'm reading the comments off YouTube chat right now, so head on over there.
Alright, so we could just put the dirt in here as is. The thing is, we made this layer to keep the substrate separate from the water. So if we put the substrate in here, over time it's going to gradually work its way down into the rocks. And it could work, it might not create any issues, but it really helps to create an additional barrier between this. Now you could use sphagnum moss, you could use actually filter floss like polyfill.
You use polyfill.
And in line with that, one of my top tools to use, and this is my terrarium toolbox.
This is like Kevin's got a little aquascaping box. This is a terrarium, freaking everything in here.
One of my top tools to use is this thing that comes in with polyfill. Okay. It's like the little, it's almost like a chopstick. So that's a little bit of crossover. Because I don't know, polyfill is probably one of the best mechanical filtrations out there.
I have it in almost every tank setup here, so it works phenomenally, especially to polish water. Just takes out all the little particulates.
So we'll return to this in a second. I just wanted to mention that while it was on my mind. So anyways, what I have here is carbon fiberglass window screen. This is the same stuff that literally is keeping your window, keeping bugs from flying in your window. Now, this isn't as fine as I usually like to use, but it will work well enough to keep the substrate from going down into there. Now, some amount will go down in there, but it's not going to be the end of the world. And this is a little trick that I showed in one of my videos. And if you watch a lot of other terrarium videos, people have been using this, but this is something that I pretty much pioneered. I won't say that it's basically something I pioneered. I hadn't seen it before I did it. Basically, you want this to be larger than the diameter of your container so that it kind of curls up like this. And the reason that you want that, almost like a little cup or a coffee filter. Coffee filter is a great example for that. And what's going to happen is the substrate's actually going to push this mesh up against the side of the glass. So it's going to even more so keep the substrate from going down into the false bottom. Onto the substrate, this is an extremely important part to your terrarium. The reason being that if you just throw potting soil in here, it's very prone to compaction and different things like that, so it's not going to produce long-term results. What I have here, it's my own mix. I've kind of developed it over the years. I've been making terrariums for about 8 or 9 years, so this is kind of something that I've built upon. What it is it's my take on an ABG mix, which is Atlantic Botanical Garden. They do a lot of stuff with dart frogs and whatnot, but what this is it's sphagnum moss, charcoal, orchid bark, sand, cocoa fiber, and I believe that's it. I have videos on it. I'll have him link it up, and it goes over the exact mix.
Yeah, I was just about to say, it looks similar to the orchid mixture that I have upstairs, minus the sand, because you don't really need sand with orchids. But.
Yeah, and I mean, there are other alternatives that you could use for sure, but basically, you want something that's going to stay moist, but not compact. So, almost like fluffy. That's the best way I can describe it.
And I would guess you would need something that's similar to like a cactus mix or an orchid mix that allows drainage. To allow the water to go through its life cycle of going down into this false bottom and then essentially evaporating back up.
Yeah.
And through its stages of that.
Yeah, exactly. And we can we'll touch more on that later on. So I got that mesh in there, and I'm gonna put in only a little bit of this substrate because I add it as I add the plants and stuff. And
somebody's got a question.
Sure.
Can you have mushrooms in there? Where would you get them, and how would you keep them alive? Would the spores just keep a sustainable thing going?
Okay, so the thing to realize with mushrooms is that the fruit, the actual mushroom that you see, that isn't the mushroom. That is just the fruit. What the mushroom actually is it's a network organism within like a piece of wood, for example.
It's like roots. It really just resembles roots.
Yeah.
The way it spreads out.
So what I have here is a syringe full of the bitter oyster mushroom, and this is actually a bioluminescent mushroom. And essentially what this is this is the isolated mushroom spore. What I could do is inoculate little wood spores or little wood dowels with this, and then drill holes in wood after this has been living on the wood, seal it up with some wax, leave it aside for a little bit, and then once the mushrooms take form in the log, over time you'll have mushrooms just growing out. That's really the only way that you can isolate mushroom growth in a terrarium. Otherwise it's going to be totally random, and mushrooms are very easily contaminated. So if I wouldn't do this in an extremely controlled environment, it will ruin the whole thing and not work. So hopefully that answers your question.
Another question comes up. I had a terrarium, but a problem with spider mites. How can you prevent that? Because I actually have an aphid problem going on right now with some of my
spider mites. Beneficial nematodes. You can buy them on Amazon, various different places. Essentially, a nematode's basically like a little worm. It's more than that, but you get predatory or beneficial nematodes. And essentially what they'll do is they live in the substrate and they'll exterminate everything. So no matter what kind of bug or insect is in your terrarium, they'll kill them all. But once they kill off all the bugs, they'll die because they're predatory. They don't have anything to feed on. So that's let nature take care of it. There's no point in using chemicals or anything like that.
All right, commence.
Okay, so do you want to grab some stones or driftwood or anything like that?
Let's see.
So much like an aquascape, it's always recommended to hardscape first. And the reason being that the hardscape will kind of dictate the design of everything. So I have him. Alright, yeah.
I don't know if those are gonna
That's
be too
perfect.
big.
He got serious stone here.
I got some bigger ones and maybe some smaller ones in here.
I think this will be perfect.
Be fine? Okay.
Yeah. Serious stone, that's my favorite aquascape stone. I just think it looks awesome. And
you want to do spiderwood or?
This one has spiderwood, so I don't like if you want them to be, whatever looks cool. So I'm gonna grab a few stones here, and it's always nice to hardscape prior to going into your enclosure, so that way you're not scraping up the glass. I will say that a container like this is a lot harder to scratch than an aquarium.
Is that too big?
It's a little Asian. Let me see.
They're all.
This one could work.
Yeah.
I just feel like it looks too similar to the stones in a way. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Alright, let's see.
So, it's always good to hardscape before you go into the enclosure, just to get a better idea, so that way once you go in here you can just set it right up. So I'm not actually seeing this from the front. I don't know if it looks good or not. I really like how this one looks standing up here. I think this one too will look good with it. I don't know if that layout is solid.
It's either that or some spiderwood. All the other ones I have.
I don't know. I'm gonna come around the front here so I can actually see what I'm hardscaping.
And you could scape it
this way.
Yeah, and then
yeah. All right.
That'll be the easiest way. Well, these might even be too big. Can break these if we need to. I have a saw.
And so something like this, it's very like you just want the stones to kind of fit together. And I'm not gonna get too crazy with this because I did something recently. I hardscaped for 4 hours.
Oh my god.
Like I was literally just sitting here for 4 hours to get the perfect thing, and it's just hardscape it's just so important. I can't stress it enough.
Well, that's because that's the whole look of it, you know?
Yeah. No, this might be money. That might be. Honestly, if you can just get me like a single good stick, I might just go simple and do something like this. Yeah, let me see it first. Get something a little bit taller.
Too big?
Yeah. Let's see, this one might be it. Yeah, we'll go with the original one. Why not? Any questions?
Well, somebody said, "Hey, I thought it would be a remote, but he is actually there." Yeah.
Yeah, I'm actually here.
He drove what?
From SoCal. That's what I said earlier. No, I'm on a business trip right now in Philadelphia, so I drove about an hour and a half to get here from Philadelphia to New Jersey. So.
And then Philadelphia is how far from your house, roughly?
About 5 hours.
Holy crap!
It wasn't a bad drive though.
So he's about 7 hours from home
Yeah.
to be here tonight. So.
Yeah.
If you haven't checked out Serpa Design's YouTube channel yet, you definitely should, just for that fact alone.
Yeah. Alright, now, for real though, I need to just get something done here, because, like, yeah, whatever, we'll do that.
Alright.
Because I don't want to get too crazy with this,
Yeah, no,
just
that's
because it could take hours to get it right. I'm not, like I said, I'm not a trained aquascaper. No Yuri's or anything. I'm not going to just, like...
Yuri's is my man!
So, I like to, whenever I do terrariums, I like to, a lot of times, make them back-focused. And what I mean by that is, we'll have, like, a hardscape sort of in the center, plants in the background, and then a cool foreground. With something like that, I feel like it's really easy to create depth. And that kind of goes into these aren't rules. This is just what I go by whenever I create terrariums. It's all about contrast, depth, and composition. So contrast among leaf plants, contrast among your hardscape, different elements like that. With the contrast, you can create depth. Along with your composition, you can create depth. And if you kind of incorporate those elements together, you'll get a natural look pretty much no matter what.
Yeah. And I kind of like how you're doing this too, because I think it'll allow for airflow too, and that kind of ties back to aquariums. You want to allow enough room for water to move around in an aquarium, and I'm guessing it's kind of the same thing with the terrarium. You want to allow enough room for water to move around.
Sort of. Alright, so I got this trusty thing. I use this tool. Wait, I'm good on those. Some more.
Okay, you good on this?
Yeah. Oh. Unless, if you can get like a few really small pieces.
Of these?
Yeah, that would be cool. You don't have to, but it...
You know what? No, I actually might have some.
Alright, so now we're going to open up the toolbox here. And what I have here are these wire cutters from Amazon. I use these things for nearly about everything. And I was using them the other day to trim wood. So, gotta trim it right about here. I'm just gonna... The spiderwood's pretty soft, so it breaks relatively easily.
I got tons of tiny gravel here. Tiny little pieces.
Alright, nice. Just grab like a handful. I don't really care what they look like. I can freestyle it. I gotta remember how this was in. Yeah, like that. So almost like the roots have grown over the rocks. That's kind of the look that I want to create here. And then I'll save this piece that I broke off because we could incorporate it into the substrate or a foreground element later on.
That's another key thing too, like with aquascaping, you want to blend elements together and, keeping like that little piece to do so. That's like a final touch that's going to really set it off.
It's all about the details. So next, I got this little fan brush, and this is from my painting kit, and I like to use this to sort of move things around, so that way I don't have to stick my hands in there as much, because I'm a big guy, I got big hands and stuff, so it's hard to work in here.
Feels like I'm only friends with tall people, because Kevin's 6 feet something, and you're definitely up there too, so...
Well, we gotta backtrack because I guess I have, what's the word? Stage fright? I don't know if it'd be stage fright or like you get ahead of yourself because you're on camera live.
It's possible, especially for people that don't do it often.
So, I never gone live before, so normally when you see my videos, they're highly scripted. So, bear with me here. I gotta backtrack slightly. I forgot a very important component. I got charcoal here, and the charcoal is supposed to go in between the false bottom and the substrate. Now I have charcoal mixed into my substrate, so it wouldn't have been that big of a deal if I didn't add it, but it's really important because it will help keep the terrarium cleaner, and what it will do is it helps inhibit mold growth, and mold growth in a terrarium is extremely problematic, especially when you first set up a terrarium and it's kind of getting that equilibrium. But also, it will serve as a breeding ground for springtails, which we will add in a little bit here. And those are kind of my secret weapon. I started out making bioactive vivariums long before I was making terrariums. So when I went to make terrariums, I didn't really like look up any videos or anything like that. I just was thinking, oh, I'll make it like a vivarium, and it's kind of a trend that you'll see now. A lot of people incorporating springtails.
Somebody asked, I want to set up a scorpion terrarium. Can I use the same concepts you are doing tonight?
Depends on the type of scorpion. Is it a emperor scorpion, something that's more tropical? Is it a desert scorpion? So that kind of keep that in mind. If it's something like a emperor scorpion, definitely could work. If it's something that lives in more of arid type of conditions, you could do something similar, but it would have to be slightly different to accommodate those things. Now, you wouldn't want to keep a scorpion in a closed container like this if that was sort of where you were going with that.
Yeah, you definitely want airflow, but I guess like if you were to build like an open...
Yeah, like a vivarium.
Yeah, sort of thing.
And that's a question I get a lot. What is the difference between a vivarium and a terrarium? Well, a vivarium is a terrarium, but a terrarium is not a vivarium. And it might seem a little bit ridiculous, but what a vivarium is it's a terrarium intended for research or observation. Typically, they'll have animals in them.
Yeah. Somebody says, what's the point of the charcoal?
As I say, the charcoal will help. It basically acts as a purification element, sort of like carbon in an aquarium, and you could actually use carbon as a substitute for charcoal. And I'll finish answering your question here, but I'm just kind of spraying it down so that the substrate isn't as fluffy as it currently is, because it's bone dry right now, and I'll be able to work in here easier if it's a little bit wet. Anyways, as I said, it acts as a purification element. It helps inhibit mold growth, and it also serves as a breeding ground for our springtails, which will also help keep the terrarium clean. In a nutshell, there's a lot more that I can go into about it, but I feel like it's probably not necessary.
Well, somebody says, what is the difference between a terrarium, vivarium, and a paludarium, etc.? Well, we went over what terrarium and vivarium are, but a paludarium is a terrarium with a water element?
Yeah, it's
essentially.
Basically, it's a terrarium or vivarium that is heavily focusing on the water feature of it. So it could be half water, it could be basically like a waterfall, a basin. Now that almost gets into the realm of riparium, but what a riparium is it's an aquarium with only plants growing out of the top. You could have aquatic plants as well, but there's not any land areas. Whereas in a paludarium, there are sort of like land areas.
Which I guess the tank that I have upstairs would be a paludarium if it was to be classified under anything.
In a nutshell, it's tough because there's so many different ariums.
Yeah. Creative Pet Keeping is here. Hello.
What's up? She said that she's been marathoning my videos, I believe was the time.
Yeah, I saw that on Facebook. I think she put it up.
Thanks for the watches. I appreciate it. Now, I may have screwed up this hardscape slightly. Yeah, I did.
So, other than terrariums, you also have aquariums.
Yeah. Funny fact is, I've been keeping aquariums for much longer than I've been doing terrariums. I've been keeping aquariums for about 11 or 12 years, and I've been doing terrariums for about 8 or 9. It's a long time.
Now, is that going to fit, though? Looks like it.
Yeah, let's see. It might.
Barely.
Just barely, yeah. I'll kind of push down the rocks a little bit. Let me look at this from the front just to see. I mean, it's probably good enough.
Yeah, it looks good. Love that white vein to that rock.
Oh, yeah.
The Cerio stone is so nice.
Zebra stone's cool, too. I don't know if you ever...
I haven't seen
any
that
of
one yet.
It's sweet. Look into it.
Somebody says, I think his first animal as a kid was a toad.
It was. American toads.
Did I just lose feed? Why did I lose the feed?
Sunny.
We're still still going? It looks like we're still going. No, we're still going. Okay. I don't know what the hell happened there.
Yeah. My first animals were American toads, and then it later exploded into the collection that you see me have now. Now, I did have a bad period where my snapping turtle died, my dog died. My snapping turtle was 7, my dog was 14, and then my African bullfrog, which was 13, died. So it pretty much, like, I got out of the animal keeping hobby. I still was keeping animals, but it demotivated me because it was like all my favorites just kind of like went at once.
Well, the first time I killed my Bosemani rainbows that I had, like before all, well, no, I think actually it was when I started doing all this at my old apartment. I was like about to just throw in the towel and be like, nope, I'm done, because I gassed them all off with CO2.
Right, and then once it happens so many times, you just kind of get over it, and it's just a part of the hobby.
Like, it sucks, but it's like, you know, they're not going to live forever, nor are we, so it's like, it's kind of the life.
What is that? I bought those. I don't know what they are. It's some kind of aquatic plant, or it claims to be.
Okay, so 98% of the time, these are not truly aquatic. 98% of the time. Oftentimes people are buying dwarf baby tears as seeds. You gotta keep in mind dwarf baby tears are a seriously tiny plant, right? So to harvest seeds from that flower is not a practical occupation for anybody. So they're normally, what they are is a type of hygrophilia that is either Hygrophilia polysperma, which is essentially an illegal plant, invasive plant to ship, or it's another type of hygro or a similar plant that does not grow in water. It will sprout. It'll have its 2 little leaves that'll sprout, and then it'll slowly die out. So,
well, I brought plants to escape with this. I brought a Begonia Rex. I actually don't think I want to use this in here because it's going to grow too large, and I don't want Justin to have to be maintaining it all the time.
Less maintenance is better.
Yeah. Plus, I mean, this is a cool house plant. He likes house plants. And I think we should probably do mostly aquatic plants with this anyways. I think it might make sense. But you guys know how I roll. I got to bring Ficus pumila quercifolia, otherwise known as oak leaf creeping fig. This is a staple terrarium plant of mine. It's just a really cool vining plant. And I mean, if you don't like that plant, something's not right with you.
For real.
It's awesome.
If you got beef with this plant,
you got beef with me.
Yeah. Alright, let's see. You want to do Monte Carlo? Or?
Definitely. I definitely want to do Nubius. Like, maybe if you have some larger Nubius for the background, that might be cool. Do you have Java, like some Java moss or different kind of moss we could use?
Yeah, I have.
I'll go over my terrarium kit here a little bit as he's doing that. I have some scissors. I got my tweezers in here. Other kind of scissors, more tweezers. These are a really useful thing to have. Little pipettes. It helps you disperse the water easier than spraying it in. And a lot of times you'll kind of mess up the scape if you're spraying it around. And I also got cotton balls for the very end when we need to clean off the glass before you seal it up. I have some other plants too. This is a native fern. I brought in a bunch of mosses and stuff from a forest near my house, and this sprouted up just on its own, and it works really well in terrarium, so I brought that. I also got Peperomia frazeri or frazeri, depending on however you want to pronounce it. That's a cool carpeting plant. You missed a lot.
Alright.
So,
yeah. I don't know if this. Perfect. I didn't grab Monte Carlo. I don't know if we'll have enough room for it.
No, that's fine. That's pretty much the way that I make terrariums. Is I just grab a bunch of stuff and just let the terrarium take shape. I don't really like to plan stuff out because I feel like it, in some ways, takes the fun away from it.
Right.
And if you think about what's going on in nature, it's not planning itself out. It just kind of happens. So this is an Anubias?
Yeah, this is a Nubius efazeli. It has a red rhizome. That's one of the coolest Anubias.
Nice. So planting Anubias in aquariums and terrariums, you never want to plant the rhizome. Only the roots.
Let's see. How do you have plants in an aquarium for cheap? Best way to do that is like stem plants. Those are normally cheap. They propagate out. You can grow a ton of them and then sell them to other hobbyists, make some money, and buy more plants.
Or make friends.
Also go into your local fish clubs. Normally there's I'm blown away by how many cheap plants are at my local club. I walk in there like, oh, $1 for all that Java moss? I'll take that.
Yeah.
Like,
or sometimes local fish stores will just be trying to get rid of plants. It's kind of rare, but you will have that happen sometimes. This is a boost?
Yeah, that's a boost of Philandra Green Wavy.
Nice. How big it can get? I just want to know.
Terrestrial, I think that's because that's essentially the terrestrial form.
Okay.
So.
All right. So we sort of touched on this earlier. A big crossover between the terrarium and the aquarium is a lot of most of the time whenever you buy aquarium plants, you're like, man, it died off, it melted back. That's probably because it was grown out of water. If you saw my nativescape, he sent me the Anubias heterophylla and Lancifolia, and I knew those things were grown out of the water. You're not getting something like that.
No, they're not even going to be that big.
And so I had a lot of issues with them melting back, and about 2 months later, they're finally now actually getting real underwater growth. So it's something that you got to be patient with, but if you're putting them in a terrarium, you're gonna have less issues with that.
Yeah. And here's the thing to think of: you have to take into consideration how fast the plant normally grows.
Yeah.
So with Anubis, it grows super slow, so it's going to convert really slowly. It's going to lose its leaves, then it's going to take forever and regrow new underwater leaves. If it's say like a stem plant, those grow relatively quickly. For the most part, they're going to lose their leaves quickly and regrow quickly. So.
Now, you can tell me what you think about this. I'm going to do it anyways, but I always like to trim these roots before I put them in sometimes if it's hard to plant it. Now, what do you think about doing that for an aquarium?
It's kind of like a mixed bag. Trimming roots on a plant is actually harming the plant because they're essentially sensory organs to the plant.
Yeah, definitely.
They smell, they feel, they taste. For the plant, so they find where nutrients are and all that. By you cutting them off, it's like losing an arm, essentially. With that said, they still regrow them, but I feel like when you do chop the roots off, it actually takes longer for the plant to reestablish itself. Mm-hmm. But in some cases, you just can't plant unless you remove the roots, so you have to do so. That's just. I mean, every time I plant an aquascape, as crypts especially, you'll have roots that are a foot long. It's impossible to plant those, so you have to trim them.
So you'll notice, and if you want to hold this up to the camera to show them, the one with the longer root, I kind of just set the roots like that, and I'll put a little bit of substrate over top of that. But when I was planting in the background, it's pretty much impossible for me to do that.
Yeah, the plants will find their way too. Like you don't have to. You can almost kind of just set them down, and they'll eventually root themselves for the most part. Some plants may be a little more finicky than others, but like I said, they're sensory organs, so they're going to smell and taste and feel where the nutrients are, and the plant wants those nutrients. So if it knows that there's good food beneath it, it's going to start sending down roots.
Yeah. On a side note, this is something. You can tell me what you think about this. I think don't be afraid to trim off leaves whenever you're planting your new plants, because a lot of them are just going to die off anyways. And I mean, I guess it could go both ways though, because if you remove too many, then it wouldn't get the right.
I feel as long as the leaf isn't damaged, you should always leave it on the plant. Or when it's brand new and it may have a couple of damaged leaves that are either experiencing some meltback or whatever the case is, you want to leave them to allow the plant to have the best chance to survive. But after it's adjusted and been there for a couple weeks, then you can start removing them.
Okay.
People want to know what's on your shirt. It's a puffer.
Yeah, here, I'll come up.
go up closer. Definitely a puffer fish. There you go.
You like it? Just for the occasion. My fiance gave me hell when I bought this trip. Because we were going on vacation with her parents, and she's like, my mom's going to have a field day if she sees that. And I was like, well, she's going to have a field day then, because that shirt is fresh.
Somebody wants to know, have you ever had mud skippers?
I have not, but I keep seeing them at a local fish store, and me and my brother go together, and he's like, dude, you gotta get those. dude, you gotta get those, and like, I want to get them, but it's like, I got so much stuff going on, it's not the right time, but maybe eventually. Okay, so...
Go ahead.
Okay, so we got all this Anubias in here. I think it's a good composition. If you see, the way that I set it up was almost only around the part of the stick that sticks up like that. And,
yeah, it creates like a nice, like jungle effect.
As it grows in, it will look a little bit nicer, because like this side will get filled in. But you don't want to just pack it so tight with plants that it doesn't really grow right. I tend to lean towards the side of planting less, let it grow in, and then address it as you go, instead of just like stuffing it with plants and then constantly having to deal with it to get it to look right.
So Frankie says, I just got an Anubis barteri nano plant in the mail today, and most of the leaves on the plant were dead, but there are 2 good leaves. Will the plant grow back? Frankie, one, if you got it from me, shoot me a message. We do have a DOA policy, so just in case it's not good, shoot me a picture. I'll take a look at it to double check. But in general, yes, if it still has good leaves and the rhizome is not mushy, it'll still be fine. So.
Okay, so I'm just kind of preparing Anubias Nana Petite right now. There's some of these leaves on here, like this one here. I'm cutting those off.
Somebody says, need some moss in the front.
Oh yeah, we're getting there. We're getting there.
This is the king of mosses.
Bob Moss.
I always thought I was the king of the moss. I have
Have you seen my Instagram?
Yeah.
Half of the pictures are moss.
This is true. Moss is great though. I have collectoritis with it. By the way, if you guys aren't subscribed to Serpa's Design on YouTube, you should go check him out, because he did a whole fish room tour. So there's been a couple other YouTubers that have came and done fish room tours of this spot. But there's been a couple new things which you guys have not seen yet on the YouTube channel. So he's going to be the first one to show those.
Plus, we're getting some crispy B-roll. I don't know if other people are...
Yeah, I don't know. They didn't really do too many B-roll shots,
So, if you see, I left this little crevice here in the rock. And I'm going to try my best to plant the Anubias in this crevice, so that way it creates a whole different look here. So, because I want to keep the hardscape. I don't want to cover it up with moss or anything like that, because the serious stone it's just like a beautiful stone all on its own. You don't want to take away from it completely.
I used aquarium carbon and rinsed the dust off first. Is that okay?
Yeah. For a terrarium?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. Well, they tell you to do that before you put it in your aquarium anyways, so it's the same thing.
Do you keep shrimp?
I don't have good luck with crustaceans. Number one, I'm allergic to them.
Oh, yeah, that's probably not a good thing.
But the most recent shrimp I kept were whisker shrimp. And they were awesome. But you know what they did? They jumped out of the aquarium. I didn't even know, like... I don't know. I'm not that much of a shrimp guy, so I don't know all of the ins and outs of shrimp. But apparently they jump out. The one day I came downstairs and they were all on the floor.
Yeah. Shrimp will do that. Lids are very necessary for things.
But yeah, I do want to get more into shrimp keeping, though. At my own discretion. Because, like I said, I am allergic to them.
But now, are you allergic to the point, like, if you handle them, you'll break out?
Oh, yeah. I'm allergic to bloodworms, but I still feed them to my fish.
Oh, God.
You know, I'll take a bullet for the team.
So, Jenny says, I want to do a terrarium, but I feel like the plants would die on me.
That's not a very good reason not to do a terrarium. And what I mean by that is you're basically saying you can't do it before you even try. It's not that hard, and what's the worst thing that happens? You try it, some plants die, and it doesn't work out. Honestly, it's a lot of experimentation. It's a lot of trial and error. Like, I didn't get good at making terrariums overnight. It took a long time.
Yeah. I mean, you guys, for those of you that have seen the most expensive Anubis video that I did and all that, several of those died, and those are like
$50 to $100 plants that I bought. So I mean, killing plants is just kind of the thing that's going to happen with experimentation and all that. So I mean,
it's not like you want it to happen or that you don't regard the plant's life, but it's a fact of life.
Let's see. Sharon says, I got an Anubis Pinto shipped. All the leaves froze, but the rhizomes seemed okay. Stuck it in the tank, and I'm waiting for. But I do think it is still alive, and you didn't get it from me. Yeah, I mean, if it froze, that could be a thing, because when water freezes, it'll damage the cell structure. Hence why plants die back in the winter. So if the plant froze completely, it may not be good. But if the rhizome is still hard, it has a possibility of still surviving. But only time will tell with that. How many leaves should be cut off from the Anubis in order for it to grow in a terrarium?
As little as possible. I usually only trim the ones that look like they're not doing well, like they have holes in them or they're yellowing, showing deficiencies or anything like that.
Yeah.
Show them that up close. So what he's showing you now is live sphagnum moss. You'll typically see it in its dried up form, and if you actually keep the dried up form moist enough, long enough, it will actually come back to life like this. But this is stuff that I've sourced myself out in the woods, and I've grown it out for a few years, so it's like my own personal stash.
I feel like Serpa has like this private closet of just like bins like this.
It actually is.
It is, isn't it? Of just plants growing out, just all stacked. Like I have aquariums here with plants. He just has tubs of terrestrial plants growing.
So this is great because it will do excellent in a terrarium environment. But it also is cool as a background plant because it will grow up the glass, and it adds a lot of nice texture as well. It almost has a nacreous look to it, but a little bit more fine.
What type of beneficial nematode do you suggest to help combat pests in soil?
Pests.
Okay, dry pests.
Just predatory nematodes, beneficial. If you just look online, I'm sure you could find different kinds.
Do you have a video on it by any chance? Or
no? I do not have a video on it. I have a bag of nematodes in my fridge, but I don't have mites or anything. So like,
I think you need to get mites.
Yeah.
And make that happen.
Because the thing to keep in mind with the nematodes, though, if you have springtails, if you have isopods, they're gonna kill those too. They'll exterminate everything. So if you're trying to keep those as well,
could you have nematodes and springtails could they coexist at a certain point, or would they completely wipe them out?
If they were just like regular nematodes, not predatory nematodes, sure.
Well, but if they were the predatory ones, like the springtails couldn't keep up with their...
maybe, but I think that if springtail production was getting more, the nematodes would just produce more.
Okay, gotcha.
You know what I mean? Because it's in a confined environment. It's not like in nature where the springtails could move somewhere else. Yeah.
So Jenny comes back and says, I don't have spare plants I could take from my tank right now, though, so hopefully... and then somebody says, look up the video he did on a native terrarium. He made some of the plants and dirt from a near forest area by his house.
Yeah, that's where this comes from, actually. And another plant that I have here, you won't really be able to see it too well because the portion is really small. What that is liverwort, and I actually got that near a forest near my house, as well as this fern. So, again, you don't really need that much money, although I will add the huge disclaimer with native plants that they don't always do well in a terrarium. And the reason being that if you live in an area like me or Justin, it's a temperate environment. So temperate plants really don't like a terrarium environment. It's humid, it's really moist, and it doesn't allow for that cold or dry out period. So keep that in mind, but pretty much all mosses will work.
Sharon says, Sherpa is the reason I have multiple bins of moss in my basement. And she says, have you tried Kyoto moss?
Kyoto moss?
And have you been successful with it? Kyoto?
Kyoto?
Kyoto, maybe? Am I pronouncing that wrong?
I don't, probably not. Unfortunately.
Fish and Shrimp by Rich says, when will my order ship? Label created, no other information by USPS. If you placed your order and it says label printed or label created, it's in the mail today, so you'll have updated tracking information tomorrow. It takes a data update.
Alright, so another cool terrarium hack, if you will, is duckweed. Duckweed makes an awesome ground cover in terrariums, being that it's a bunch of individual leaves, so it makes a cool texture. And I have some in here, but I'm going to ask him to get me some later on. I'm sure you're not going to mind.
No, I got plenty.
Yeah. But I think it will create a cool look. I use it in some of my vivariums. But next we're going to add this boost. I don't actually have boost, but it's one of my favorite plants.
It's a great plant, especially in aquariums.
So we only have 2 here, and a lot of people be like, oh, that's like, you can't do that. You need at least 3 plants. It doesn't make a good design if you do 2. I tend to disagree with that. If you do it right, I feel like it could be good. Like for this, I'm actually going to put both boosts on the same side.
Jenny says she's in Florida, so she's good.
Oh, yeah, you're good.
Yeah, you're most likely very good, because everything there. You could just go outside with a shovel and...
What's it like there right now? Tell me about it, because this is the winter that won't end.
Yeah.
It's never... Honestly, like, years from now, I think this is going to be like, people are going to be talking about this winter, like, oh, you remember 2008, it wouldn't end.
Yeah, and no, what's nice, though, I don't know over by you if you've gotten a whole lot of snow. We got a couple snowstorms, like 4, I think, in a row. But other than that, there hasn't really been much. So...
I like the snow. I like how it looks. Okay, so now we're going to add our buddies, the springtails.
Alright, somebody says, how long before spring, I'm guessing springtails will reproduce. I got some a while ago off eBay, but they don't seem to be growing in number.
How are you feeding them? What type of culture are you keeping them in?
Yeah, Instagram has a 1 hour cutoff, so it already cycled through that.
If you want to show this off.
Oop, they're jumping everywhere.
So what we got here is a springtail. In all my videos, people are always like, what are those little white worms? And they're actually an arthropod, like a mini arthropod. And what these guys do is they eat mold, in a sense.
Now, what do you feed them?
What I feed them is either uncooked long grain brown rice, which is a good food source because it lasts really long and it's prone to molding, and that's good because the springtails will eat the mold. Another good food source is nutritional yeast, but you have to like replace it pretty quickly because they eat it like pretty readily. So I have a whole culture here, and unless you want to culture these, I'm just going to dump the whole thing in there. And these are really pretty much my secret weapon for terrariums. As I explained earlier in the video, I started out making bioactive vivariums before I made terrariums, and I discovered that by adding these, whenever the terrarium molds in the beginning, it's not gonna kill off the terrarium. And that's really the only time that mold will occur in a terrarium, is whenever you first set it up, because it has to get like an equilibrium. If you think about it, none of these materials were subjected to this environment, and as soon as you put them in this tropical sort of environment, they don't really know what to do, so it's an equilibrium's being gained. And during that process, especially if you're using wood, it doesn't really happen as much if you don't use wood, but I use wood in my substrate. I always like to use wood hardscape, so it's pretty much like, you know, it's going to happen.
Somebody says, are springtails essential, or can you do without?
You can do without them, but it's just like an added layer of success. Like I will bet you your success will be upped substantially if you use them. But no, you do not need to have them. And if you're getting soil from outside, you'll get springtails eventually. So right now I'm just kind of cleaning off the sides of the container. We're getting close to being done here, actually. It's like all of a sudden it starts to come together.
Yeah, it's looking really cool. Somebody asks, does dried bag orchid moss grow in Tumin green in terrariums? Tumin? Or turn green?
green.
Okay, turn green.
Yeah, actually, if the How to Terrarium Episode 2, the closed tropical terrarium, I didn't actually add live sphagnum moss to that setup, but I did add sphagnum moss to the substrate, and now there's a ton of live sphagnum moss in it, so eventually it does come back to life.
So what if somebody says, love how Serpa just took over almost completely, said 95% of the live stream. Well, to be fair, I know nothing about this realm, so this is his forte, like...
Yeah, I mean, we didn't plan this out either. It was basically just...
I'm learning just as much as you guys are. Like, I'm like, this is cool stuff, so...
Java moss, killer in terrariums. It does really well, and I'm actually just going to put this whole thing in there. The only thing to keep in mind is that it doesn't like to carpet. It likes to grow up like grass. So what you can do is just, as it grows up with grass, just trim it and let it fall over, and it will just denser and denser. And it's not like in an aquarium where when you trim it, it's going to be flying all over the place.
Yeah. Oh god, that's the worst. That's why like you always got to turn off your filter when you're trimming plants.
Yeah, I saw you call someone out for that on Instagram the other day.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's like they're flying all over the place. Somebody says, how expensive is that terrarium? What did you have to pay him, Justin? I paid him $1 million. No.
Yeah, he flew me out from SoCal.
No, I mean, what do you think a cost of a terrarium like this would cost?
$50.
Yeah.
The thing is, I've explained this in so many of my videos, but I buy everything in bulk. So my terrariums and vivariums and whatnot, they might actually only cost like $5 because I buy so much of an excess of things.
Yeah, I would say minus maybe some of the aquarium plants, just because those can be a little pricey depending on what you... I mean, if you already have an aquarium, you probably have plants that you could just migrate over.
Right.
So you almost probably have the plants covered there. And then, you know, a couple rocks, you could probably even get some stuff from your backyard and use it.
Okay, so we got that moss planted. Now I want to add some additional hardscape elements.
Could you use like twigs from your backyard, or does that have to be like driftwood?
No, it doesn't have to be. The thing to keep in mind though is most of the sticks and stuff that are sold for aquarium use, they're dense, so it takes a long time for them to degrade.
Okay.
Stuff from your backyard, it might degrade in a year.
Gotcha.
Or so.
Okay.
Those little like pine cone things that you showed earlier, those are really cool looking in terrariums, but they degrade like nobody's business.
Yeah. Well, even in aquariums, though, like the ones I put in here already.
Otherwise, I would have said that we should use some.
So somebody says, so would you just stick the container by a window, or would you suggest a light?
You could use a light if you don't have a good windowsill. I recommend putting it on a north-facing window. For me, that seems to be what works best. I have ones on an eastern-facing window as well, and they don't seem to perform as well. So, preferably a north-facing window. It doesn't have to be direct sunlight. Partial sunlight is probably actually better.
Here comes the dogs.
What's up, buddy?
I might actually stick these by my my paludarium, because it has that floodlight that will hit these pretty well.
Yeah, whatever you want to do.
Does Serpa have fish on his shirt? Yep, puffer fish. What do you want, honey? Why do you smell like dead fish? What are you eating? That's never a good sign.
Tuna. That's what it smells like.
That's never a good sign. So yeah, much like aquascaping, the little details that he's doing now with the stones, it can add so much texture and so much depth to the scape. That's essentially the same thing here. He's adding little stones that are, you know,
draw your eye throughout the...
Yeah, kind of, and it looks like a cohesive thing. Like if you just have a stone, like one big stone sitting there, kind of looks out of place. I mean, of course, maybe you'll find that in nature, like one big stone, but if you have lots of little complementary stones and sticks and stuff, it'll definitely help to, you know, like make it look like one cohesive thing.
Yeah, you don't have to take a ton of time to do this, but it will, as he suggests, like just elevate your design to the next level if you just take that extra 5 minutes to place a few extra elements.
Yeah, and usually, I mean, if you were to get, you know, like a stone like this, if you take a hammer to it, you'll have chips of you know, the rock that you could use as accent stones, and you can break little twigs off of spider driftwood or...
The less desirable rock.
Yeah.
Use all your good ones.
Yeah, use the good ones. And then...
So, like, when you go to your local fish store or whatever and buy your stones, just buy a stinky looking rock specifically to break it.
How often do you have to spray water?
Never, really. Once you do it the first time, if you keep it sealed up correctly, you won't ever have to do it. As I explained earlier, I like to do maintenance on my terrarium, so that I'll open them occasionally to trim plants and stuff, and then I'll always add a little bit of water, because once you open it, some amount of water is going to make its way out.
Before, I saw people saying that they could go and get glass jars from some of the home decor shops, but they may not necessarily have lids or airtight lids.
Yeah.
Is there a hack for that?
Okay, hack. I showed the Ugu method. What that essentially is it's a combination of silicone, 100% silicone, like you would use to seal your aquarium, and cornstarch, and you can make lids that way. Another way would just simply be to get a saran wrap, like a little plastic wrap, rubber band it on, and then cover it with like a piece of burlap so it looks aesthetically pleasing.
That's a good idea.
That's probably my best too.
It's looking good.
Thanks. And like aquascaping, aquarium, anything, if it looks good to you, that's all that matters. You don't need to come up with the next award-winning thing or whatever.
Yeah, this is all aquascapes and terrariums and everything like this is subject to your own eye and subject to what you like. There's things that I like that some people may not like, and there's things that you may like that I don't like. So
Right. All right, and we're gonna finish it off with. What are we gonna finish it off with? Come on, see if they know. What are we finishing it off with?
Well, it's a little delayed, so let's see if anybody gets it. Nobody on Instagram yet.
Somebody's gonna get it.
We'll give them a second. What do you finish off a terrarium with? Anybody know?
Yeah, I didn't add it yet. Come on, guys.
Well, you already did the springtails. That's the only thing that I know.
What?
Well, I mean,
come on, guys.
Oh.
Come on, guys. Alright. And then this is just, it adds so much texture, so much depth. If it grows on the rocks, it just, I don't know. Probably, it's like one of my top 5 plants. It's a little bit more expensive. I mean, you could probably get it for about $8 at the cheapest, but if you just get a mother plant and grow it out, it will last you.
So what makes this one so special? Is it
just
because
of
it
the
stays
size?
Small? Yeah.
Yeah, like if you see other ficus pumio plants, they grow huge. Now I have a variety called Ficus pumio minima, and it's looks. Are you familiar with what the normal plant looks like? Leaves are kind of like that. You've probably seen it like. Well, they're a little bit smaller, but this is by far the smallest.
So this is the smallest?
Yeah, and it's just so hardy. It can grow in...
Can it grow in water?
No,
you were just like...
it could grow like a riparium sort of.
Yeah.
Like just the roots growing out.
Yeah,
yeah definitely.
Because I've been looking for a plant for the paludarium that has small leaves like this.
Yeah.
That stay small. All of them are always too big.
You might need to grow it, like, get it somewhat in aqua soil.
Right.
But it should work.
Well, I'm thinking about taking like this and somehow mounting it so just the bottom is in the water, and then that way it'll keep it watered.
Yeah, it should work. I don't know. What do you think? I don't know if I like how that looks.
I think, I don't know if in the front it's good. I think it should be like coming from the back forward, maybe.
It's like that one I think looks good.
That same direction. Maybe one coming this way. Kind of making it look like it's wrapping around. Yeah, this is a super cool plant. Hopefully I don't kill it.
I would recommend making some dirt, trimming off some sections,
right,
and then like basically propagating another plant and then do it.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Well, no, I'll propagate it out. I just don't want to kill this one by itself.
Well, I've killed some plants you've sent me, so it's any consolation.
Yeah.
I think that's it. I'm gonna call my quits.
So now, other than like springtails and nematodes we've already touched on, what other type of maybe like insects could you put in something like this?
Well, really that's all that I would recommend. A lot of people want to use isopods, and they're just too voracious for a terrarium. Like the plant growth and stuff, it just can't keep up with them.
Because they eat the
yeah, I have isopods in some of my terrariums, and I have to replant them like every few months because they just kill the plants off.
That's not fun.
So that. Hold on, I'll talk to you later on. I gotta finish, I gotta finish up this terrarium. Okay, so last but not least, we gotta add the water, and then we're gonna close it up. So. Do you have like a... Well, actually, I can use that thing from the springtails. What I have here is a pipette. And I'm going to fill up the springtail culture. There's still some in here, actually. Springtails can also be used as a good food, like an alternative food source for your fish.
If you grow enough of them out?
Yeah, you can just put them in... They'll just like float on the water. And they're hydrophobic.
Have you ever done a terrarium with carnivorous plants?
No, and a lot of people ask me about that, and I'll show you something here later on. But the reason why I haven't done it yet is because most of the ones that are readily available need a cold period to survive. So it's like pretty much no matter what you do, they gotta have this cold period.
Yeah, they gotta go dormant.
And so I'm trying to figure out the logistics of that. Like, can I just put them in a terrarium, let them grow out for the summer, and then in the winter just stick it in the fridge and pull it out?
That's what I was about. I was thinking that you could probably do that.
So I haven't experimented with it yet, but it's definitely something that's on my radar because it's probably my most requested video that I haven't done yet.
I actually have a rare carnivorous aquatic plant. It's a pinwheel. Have you ever seen that?
Yeah.
I got it from Tom Barr. I don't know if you know who he is.
Sounds familiar.
He's like the grandfather of rare aquarium plants on the forums.
Probably why it sounds familiar.
Yeah. But yeah.
So what I was doing there was like specifically watering the moss with that pipette. Now I'm just going to go in here and lightly spray it. I usually like to just like spray the glass because it cleans it off, as well as water the terrarium. And then I'll just go in here with a really fine mist, if I can get it to work right. It's not my mister, I don't know how it works.
What's the smallest terrarium to put isopods in? 10 gallon?
Well yeah, if you want to make like a vivarium, so here's the thing, if you want to make something that has leaf litter in it, the isopods, they'll eat the leaf litter before they'll eat live plants. I don't really stock my terrariums with leaf litter. So like your catappa leaves or something like that you can use.
The catappa leaves.
But really, unless you're providing a food source to them, they're going to go to the next food source, which is your plants. So you could do it on a small scale, but it's just like, it's a logistical nightmare, in my opinion.
This is looking really cool.
Thank you.
I love how the wood just sits on top of the rock. It looks like it goes together so well.
And what I like to do is just like get like a little paper towel with my tweezers here and wipe it off. I also have cotton balls, and they work for really fine surfaces, but the thing is they don't really absorb the water as well as a paper towel does, so it's harder to clean it off.
That's the tank behind you on the desk. I've done videos on these tanks, such as Shell Dweller. Then over to my left over here is a Blue Bolt tank.
How many people watch and
We got 83 people watching right now. We have 39 likes.
What?
I know.
What are you doing? Come on, guys. This is like my videos. What are you doing? If you like the video, or if you don't like the video, give it a thumbs down too. Do something.
Well, we have 9 thumbs down, so we have a couple people that are hating on terrariums over here.
Yeah, that's my 9 haters because I have about 9 consistent haters. The video's up for 30 seconds. Dislike. Come on, guys. It's pathetic.
Bye.
Well, you haters make the world go round and round.
Alright. So, are we good now? Is this?
I believe we're
done. Is this the final product?
Let me clean off the exterior of the glass because it has like fingerprints on it, and that's whenever a cotton ball is really gonna help.
Gonna polish it up real good.
Yeah.
Real good for you guys. Let's see. You should do pitcher plants. They originate from Borneo, where it's humid and wet.
Yeah. I agree.
But now, would you have to feed the pitcher plants? I feel like you'd have to feed them because they can't grow in nutrients.
Well, they don't. I don't think they need to eat very frequently, though. I know Venus flytraps don't. I know that. I personally, I haven't really done much research on carnivorous plants, to be honest. And to be real with you guys, like, it's not really something that I'm too fascinated by. Like, I know some people are just so crazy about them, and I get it, but for me, it's, I guess the draw is not really there.
They say check the likes down. We jumped up to 52. Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
CPI's has a question.
Sure.
I got mainly for me, but maybe you.
Whatever.
I got 2 tissue cultures from Petco for Boost Green Wavy. They were 75% off because they were looking bad. Any tips on nursing them back to health? No, I mean, as long as the rhizomes are solid, they'll come back on their own.
Good, you can show it off. It's easier to get a good picture and stuff of it before we put the lid on.
Yeah. This is sick. I mean, I don't know. That's showing up pretty good on camera, but like, this is awesome. Because like seeing aquarium plants in like this environment and that they should all do well is really cool.
And yes, I'm eating chimes after touching springtails.
Post a picture of the terrarium on Instagram. We will. I'll post a picture of this. I'll post a picture of the other one.
Yeah, I'll take a photo later. Post it when I get back.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, I think we're good. Is that my filter? That's my filter on my other tank.
So his filter's making a little grinding sound, guys. I don't know how he is about it, but I'll be trying to go to sleep at night and I'll hear some sound. I'm like, I gotta go downstairs and make sure it's not one of my aquariums or something. Like, honestly, it's a problem. Like, you hear any sound, it's like, oh, is something malfunctioning? I need to go see you go and check all your stuff. Like,
yeah, this particular filter has been giving me an issue for the last like 3 days. It keeps doing this, so I gotta mess with it. It's alright. If it blows up, it's okay. Let's see. Oh, I like the mini jungle. I wish he did that for me. Will the creeping fig root out when it's just laid in on the surface like that?
Yeah.
Yeah, essentially most vining plants, they each node where a leaf comes off is a new opportunity for a new plant to start. So you can almost essentially just chop it up and leave a node and sprinkle it out and it'll grow. So it works really good. Is that like a dry start method for aquariums? I mean, it's essentially a similar thing, similar concept, except you're never going to flood this with water. It's a self-contained ecosystem. So, and I think that's about it. All right, guys. Thanks for watching. We're actually about 15 minutes, or actually 20 minutes over our time limit here. But Tanner did a fantastic job. Make sure you check out his YouTube. It's linked in the description, as well as Instagram, all that good stuff. Anything else?
Nah, no? I mean, guys, what it all comes down to is find out what you like to do in life and pursue it.
Definitely.
Get it done.
Follow your dreams. Hey, see you on the next one. I'm going to try and fit in a video for with Tanner for the YouTube channel, so look forward to that, hopefully.
Alright guys, thanks for tuning in. See ya.
Later.